want you to imagine lying in hospital, pregnant at 33 weeks. Stay with me, fellas, on this one. Think about yourself in the situation without the pregnant bit. But you're lying in hospital and you have a paralysis creeping up your legs. It starts in your feet, and each hour the doctors are coming in and doing tests and drawing a new line on your legs as the paralysis is going higher and higher up your body. And then after your baby is born, your pelvis is so damaged and you're in so much pain you're told that you won't be able to walk for 3 months. And you live in a 2-storey house with a 1-year-old and a baby, and your bedroom is upstairs and the bathroom is downstairs. I can't imagine how difficult this would be to face, but this is what Saskia and her family were faced with. You will be amazed at Saskia and her mum Briar's recounting of this story and what God does. Enjoy. Saskia and Briar, welcome to Revival on the Air today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Okay, so you're a mother and daughter,
Yes, we are.
but not a young mother and daughter.
What are you saying?
You've been around a little while, Saskia, haven't you?
Yes. My kids are helping run Teens Camp. Not Teens Camp, what are we? Youngies Camp. So yes, we've got a few generations going.
We do.
Yeah. So Saskia, you've recorded your testimony before, I think on YouTube, etc. But the reason I'd love to hear from both of you today is because I'm really keen, Briar, on your perspective on how it affected you, a mother with daughter who's so sick, and your perspective and how God stepped in, etc. So, Saskia, where shall we start?
Well, when you first suggested just doing it this way to me, I thought it was such a fantastic idea because Mum was there with me through every step. So from actually, you were in Tasmania.
We were.
Yeah, just before when I first started getting sick. So I'd had a couple normal illnesses that people get all the time, coughs and colds, vomiting bugs, that sort of thing. I'd had a succession of those sorts of things, gotten over them, and then I noticed some really strange sensations. And I remember getting home. I had a little baby. I was pregnant. And I remember getting home and not just feeling tired, my legs just wouldn't do what I wanted them to do. And I got from the car to a couch in the next room.
What do you mean wouldn't do what you wanted them to do?
So strange. Well, I remember sitting on the couch and actually laughing because I just thought, this is so weird. My legs it felt like when you go to the dentist and you get a local anesthetic and it starts to wear off and it feels heavy and that numb, strange feeling that you know it's a part of your body, but it doesn't feel like a part of your body. And that was happening to my legs.
All up and down, like your whole legs?
My legs from the hips sort of down in different places. I just thought, this is just so strange. Even if I want to get up and I want to go upstairs and I want to do these things, but my body is just not working. It was such a strange thing. And at the time, I mean, I laughed. It's strange to say. I actually laughed because it was such a strange thing. I didn't for a second think something serious or long-term was starting. I just thought, this is a really strange thing. And you and Dad were away, and I just got on with things that day, but it just kept getting worse, and to a point where walking became just really, really difficult. And I'd have to sort of sit and wait and then try really hard to walk, and it felt like I was dragging my legs to get them to do what I needed them to do.
And I remember Saskia ringing me. We'd just landed in Melbourne from Hobart, and then we had to catch another flight from Melbourne to Adelaide, and we talked on the phone while I was on the phone, and Saskia was explaining that this was happening, and it didn't sound good, put it that way. Not good at all. But I remember just kind of thinking, just being filled with all of these recent testimonies that I'd heard. And that really gave me a sense of it's going to be okay.
I remember being at your house.
Yes, yeah.
And because I'd had some tests and the GP that I'd seen rang me at home, and because I was kind of confined to the couch at that stage, I just couldn't do anything for myself, and Scott was at work, and so Mum and Dad were just helping me manage Jed and getting me, you know, to be able to function as you need to. And he rang me at home on my mobile. It's the only time that a doctor has rung with any sort of urgency for me. And he just said, I think you have a thing called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which I'd never heard of. And he said, the thing that I'm concerned about is that it's progressing very rapidly. And the way that it's progressing through your body and the troubles that you're having now mean that you may not be able to breathe on your own fairly soon.
What was it like hearing that?
It should have been terrifying, but it was too big to process because I had a baby and I was pregnant, and you don't think about the fact that breathing is something that is a gift and that it doesn't last forever and it can be taken away. And it was too big to comprehend. And he said, I need you to go to the hospital. You will be okay, but you need to be somewhere where they can help you breathe. And then over time, you will recover. And
So how many weeks pregnant were you?
it was a
33 weeks,
Right.
I think.
30, was I that? I think I was 29 weeks when that happened.
Okay.
Oh, there was more to,
33 once when everything else.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So significantly pregnant. And I hung up and I said to Mum and Dad, he's told me to go to the hospital. And we all just knew that all we wanted to do as a family, Kristen was there as well.
Yep. Scott was there at that stage.
Scott had come home from work, that's right. We just all stopped what we were doing and just prayed. And it wasn't for long. It was only minutes. But this incredible peace came over the entire room, and I knew that it was going to be fine. I knew that it was absolutely, God had it. And
Did you feel the same way, Brian?
I did. And I think largely due to the weekend that I'd just blown back from. It was like the Lord knew exactly what we needed and what we were going to need. And there was just this feeling that pervaded everything of God's got this and it's going to be okay. And I remember you and I drove to the hospital together, and we just kind of drove and just praised the Lord, and I told the testimonies that we had.
all.
Yeah. And when we got into the hospital, they were assessing you and everything, and we were just chatting and just kind of, just chatting about the Lord, really.
Yeah, all the miracles that you'd heard, and every single one, it was it's like it just feeds your soul. And I think that's the amazing thing. I've been thinking about joy a lot lately and how much, again, of a gift it is from the Lord. And that joy just builds through testimony and hearing people's stories of victory and how God has just been totally victorious in their life. And so I was just sitting in that state of joyful victory. I knew it was going to be okay, which it's funny because sometimes it's not until you look back that the fear of what should have been tends to set in. But at that particular time, I just didn't have any fear. I had said to the Lord, I don't care what happens, so long as my baby's fine and I can talk. I want to be able to communicate. I know that's surprising. Such a quiet person that I am. Why, Saskia?
I was on my way up here, and we had some people having coffee in our van. I said, look, I've got to go. I've got to do a podcast interview. And they said, oh, who with? I said, Saskia Briar. And the person said, good luck getting any questions in.
People who obviously know us very well. Yes, hilarious. Yes. Yeah, it was quite miraculous, wasn't it?
And I remember at that stage too, we had rung around or texted around or whatever we did nearly 19 years ago. We'd contacted quite a few people. We knew a lot of other people were praying as well. To me, there was that sort of sense of this is really serious. However, God's got this and it'll be okay. And I think that's what really kind of got us through.
Yeah.
At that particular time anyway.
It did get worse. In the wee hours of the morning, I'd been admitted to hospital by that stage, and the real paralysis had started to set in, and it started in my toes, and they moved me from a sort of general ward into high dependency.
So this has gone from just feeling heavy in your legs to actually, I can't feel my toes.
It was like that lidocaine was just been injected directly into my toes. And what they did was every hour they would come and they would check all my obs, and they would get an ice pack and they would move it slowly up my leg and tell me, when can you feel the cold? Because I could still kind of feel it, but it would feel warm, like it does when you're numb.
Yeah, right.
Cold feels warm. And they would draw a line at where it was. And so they just, throughout the night, the line was creeping further and further up my legs and up my arms simultaneously. And there were other symptoms that they were monitoring as well, with my blood pressure and things as well. And I remember making friends with the nurses who were just lovely, and sharing stories that Mum and I had been talking about on the way to the hospital with them, and watching this line without any fear of it being something that was going to, it was never going to stop me from talking. So I didn't care. I actually didn't care how far up it went. As long as I could communicate and explain my needs. There is something terribly scary, I think, about not being able to communicate what your needs are, and being helpless in that way. So that was my limit. And thank you, Lord, endlessly. But He honoured that prayer for me, and slowly, over many hours, they would come around and do the test, and the lines just went back down again.
Which wouldn't normally happen with Guillain-Barré. It's progressive illness.
Yeah.
That just, it's something that has to run its course. So that is not something that would normally happen at all. That's what I remember being told.
Yeah.
Were you telling me or something?
Yeah. So they'd explained it that essentially your immune system is attacking the myelin sheaths that cover the nerve endings that basically are like the conduit from signals in your brain to getting to the nerves to make movement and feeling happen. And all of those sheaths are being eaten away by your immune system. And so once they're gone, they take quite a long time to rebuild and recover.
What's typically quite a long time?
Months. So a 4-month case would still be relatively quick.
Okay.
And then usually, because of course, once you lose those abilities, it takes quite some time to then learn how to do things for yourself again.
Oh, so from a rehab perspective, now what, you have to learn to walk again?
Yeah,
or
years. So often I've read different accounts, and it's often years that people have to actually relearn those skills.
And many people are left with some form of permanent disability. And I didn't know any of that at the time.
Did you, Brian, know any of that?
No, not until sort of later, Dr. Kennedy and different people, and just reading about it and everything. We kind of, which is probably a good thing, but we didn't realise. Although it just, I remember thinking it felt very serious. Like it's felt scary in as much as it potentially, these are the things that, just could happen.
Yeah.
I think we did.
It is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we have so much more information available to ourselves today. I wonder sometimes if we're putting roadblocks in front of our faith by knowing everything that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether that
It'll
diminishes our ability to have simple faith
Yeah.
in our healings.
probably.
Yes, I feel like that was a protective thing that the Lord did, where the amount of understanding that I had on the situation grew with my capacity to give it to the Lord. So in those moments at the beginning where it was very serious and the symptoms actually should have been quite terrifying, I didn't understand enough of where it was going to be fearful of it. I could just give that to the Lord.
Yeah.
Remember the time, was it the GP said to you, your daughter should, what did she say?
She said, your daughter should be in an iron lung right now.
Yeah, right.
And that was,
That old-fashioned term for a respiratory type
Yeah.
thing.
do you remember how
it's
long
not
ago
Canada.
that was? Like how long after I'd recovered? Because she was amazed.
She was amazed. This is our GP that we all see now.
Yeah.
And she was just amazed at how Saskia had come through at that period of time. And it was her that said that your daughter should be in an iron lung right now.
And in some
That
ways,
freaked me out then.
yeah, in some way, it's comments like that you go, oh, it should have been that,
Yeah.
but it wasn't.
So just coming back to the timeline. So you're in hospital over the night, it was the paralysis was basically creeping up your body. And then at what point did it start to go back?
It started to go back within 24 hours of
Right.
the significant paralysis.
Yeah.
And it all started going back. I started walking. We were talking about this the other day. I was very happy to be able to walk because it meant that I could go to the bathroom. I know it's
It's the simple things in
the
life.
simple thing. Breathing, going to the toilet, talking. Yeah, it's all those things that you just take it for granted until you can't do it on your own. And so, Mum and others came into the hospital, and I was really pleased that I was able to stand up on my own and walk to the bathroom. But you remember that?
I think Scotty and I did a bit of a tag team because Jed was only just like a 1-year-old baby kind of thing. So when I was at the hospital, Scott had Jed, and then when Scott went into the hospital, I had Jed. And I drove down with Jed this particular afternoon. It was a couple of days later probably. And Scotty and I were there, and Saskia just was like, oh, so good, I can walk again. And I had little Jed there, and I hadn't been there long. And Saskia got up and, she walked to the toilet. But her version of walking was very different to what I saw. Her legs, she was kind of walking, but kind of dragging her legs behind and just saying how, oh, it's great, I can walk. And Scotty and I just looked at each other like, yeah, great. Like we could see that her legs were still not functioning fantastically, even though she could stand on them. And I remember just feeling overcome with emotion
At
that point. And I think it was like, whoa, and I just was like, well, I better take Jed back, and off we go. And for those that don't know, our grandson has the same name as your dad. So Jed, not
your husband.
my husband. Yes. So this is little Jed, 1-year-old Jed. We left. I took him back, and I think it did hit me a little bit at that point. But I was incredibly thankful because clearly the paralysis was receding. And I don't know if I heard it then or if I heard it later, but I remember them saying that the rapid onset Guillain-Barré is far worse than the more gradual, which is you had the rapid onset.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of came very quickly.
Right. So there is another sort of longer onset there. What occurs over weeks or months or
Yes.
does it right?
Yeah, months. I think there was a footballer that had it relatively recently. Every now and again I'll hear stories of people that have had it, and you can kind of see the normal progression where when it's a really rapid onset where it sort of happens in days to a week or two, the paralysis tends to last longer and the recovery is harder. Whereas if it comes on over weeks to months, then the paralysis tends to be perhaps not quite so extreme and recoverable.
And is there any understanding about why it happens?
They don't really know. It's one of those autoimmune illnesses where they know the mechanisms that are causing the issue, so they don't know what sets them off.
Yeah.
They think that it could be just an overreactive immune system response to normal things. And I'd had the cough, I'd had a vomiting bug.
You'd had a really
I'd
quite
had
flu.
yes, I'd had the flu shot, so I'm not allowed, like I can't have flu vaccines anymore because of the Guillain-Barré. They always ask you, have you ever had Guillain-Barré? And I say yes, and they go, oh, because most of the time people go, I don't know what that is. But yeah, so there's different things that can trigger it, but it's really rare.
Yeah. So what happened next?
You came home.
I was in hospital for about a week.
Yep. And then you were well enough to be discharged.
Yeah.
Home. And that was kind of the beginning of sort of like the next stage, because you were able to walk and everything, but you were still quite weak as far as just physically, just really run down and weak.
Yeah.
Would be the best way to describe it.
Yes. Yeah. Doing things would just absolutely take it out of me. And by doing things, I mean, getting up and getting dressed would be enough. So which meant, poor mum.
No.
What were you like before that? Were you a pretty sort of active type person, or?
I was a young mum, and I had.
So you're exhausted.
I mean, Jed was a fantastic sleeper and such a happy baby, but I had things that I wanted to do, and we pretty much were kind of stuck at home.
Yeah.
But I was just happy to be at home and out of hospital and recovering. And over the next month, I was walking to the point where I was walking quite normally.
Yeah.
Around the house, and the baby was growing. I was 33 weeks pregnant before I knew it, and feeling like I was done with that little chapter, and I was praising the Lord that it hadn't gone the way that it was supposed to. And yeah, over time since then, I've learned just how miraculous a gift that was from the Lord, because it should not have resolved in the way that it did.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And then
What happened then?
And then I had some contractions that were happening regularly enough that we thought we should go into hospital. I went in, I was strapped to the machine, and the contractions got closer and closer together, and then further and further apart. So they were happy to discharge me the next day. And
How many weeks were you?
33 weeks. And at 7:30 in the morning, I rolled over in the hospital bed, ready to go. And there was an audible crack. And I was in excruciating pain. And I thought, I am in full-blown labor. Like it felt like I had gone from 0 to 100 in pain, and I couldn't move. And what had happened was, as I had shifted, my pelvis had separated, and my right hemipelvis had twisted forward to such a degree that my right leg was a couple inches longer than my left leg. So
Just from rolling over in bed?
Just from rolling over in bed. So, I mean, obviously there'd been that month where I hadn't been walking very well, very much. My muscles tone probably wasn't there. The baby had grown. Just things happened to work together to that end of rolling over, and everything went kaput. And
Briar, you're shaking your head.
yeah. That's when the hard part really started, wasn't it? Because up until then, there hadn't been pain. There had been just, like all of it was painful. And the Lord sort of had stepped in, and we sort of felt like, it was sort of behind. But to be in such pain was tough.
Pain changes everything. It's just...
Both for you and for people around you.
Absolutely. And I've always thought I'd rather be the person in pain than watching someone I love in pain.
How'd you feel about that then?
It's almost something that you can't actually analyze it in the moment because you're just coping with the next minute and the next minute and the next minute. I think from that point on, I barely slept. If I slept, it was for half an hour, 45 minutes tops, and that might happen 3 times over a 24-hour period.
So were you confined to hospital at this point?
No, there wasn't permanent beds because I was still only 33 weeks pregnant, and we were expecting the pregnancy to go full term. So I was at home, but I had to go into hospital every other day to have to be monitored, for the baby to be monitored, because it was really awful. I was in so much pain, and the EKG. So when they do they put the straps on around your belly to watch the baby's heartbeat and to measure the baby's movements and things. And Harry was not doing well.
So what were they saying on your monitor?
So from that point on, he barely moved. He didn't grow. So there's a measurement that they use, a fundal height, a length that they measure, that didn't change until at all, until he was born. And his heart rate would drop whenever there was any sort of Braxton Hicks contraction or any minor movement of his, to the point where I remember watching the needle go off of the graph, off the page, because his little heart just wasn't coping with what was going on. And I wasn't coping.
Yes, you were. You don't think you were. That's one.
Okay, hang on.
Silence.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Hang on. So, Saskia, why did you think you were coping?
I was not able, I wasn't parenting. I wasn't able to parent Jed. I wasn't able to function as a wife or a mother or a daughter. I was just existing in tremendous pain and conscious throughout all of that, without the relief of sleep.
And so why did you say that you weren't functioning as a wife or as a mother? Like, what does that mean?
I was confined to bed to the point where it's amazing how much of the pelvis works in minor movements. I couldn't sit myself up without help. I couldn't swing my legs out of bed without help. I absolutely couldn't walk. And all of that happened with tremendous pain. I remember when I did have to sort of sit forward and getting help to do so, I was in so much pain that I would literally see stars and want to throw up and just be fighting the urge to be sick. And I'd never experienced anything like that. And it was relentless. So everything else doesn't exist. You're just existing, and you're just being in that moment by moment by moment. And I remember I was prescribed opioids to try and help with the pain, and I felt terrible taking those because I was pregnant, but I had to somehow get to the hospital and home again, and I couldn't do it. So I felt like I was letting everybody down. And at the same time,
Guilt about that?
yes. Oh, yeah. Yep. And that's why I hesitated when you said, would you rather be the person experiencing the pain or the person watching? I still don't know the answer to that. But when you're in pain, it's not the pain that's the issue. It's the fact that it stops you from being who you are and being able to love and care and do and care about anything else. You just exist.
And what was the medical fraternity saying about recovery or intervention or?
That it varied. They were very hopeful that once the baby was born, that I would be able to recover over time.
Which I assume it was by cesarean. I assume that's what they would be recommending, yeah?
Yes, we ended up having a cesarean at 37 weeks. There were a lot of extra people in the room because, as I said, Harry had not been doing well. He was not positioned correctly for birth. He hadn't grown. He'd barely moved. And it wasn't looking good. But I was mentally and emotionally, I was quite protected from all that implies. I think that was probably a harder time for you in some ways, do you think?
Oh, maybe. I don't know, because I don't know how it felt for you. For that, from the 33 to the 37 weeks, so that was like four weeks from that time. I mean, Scott thankfully was able to he stopped work pretty much, didn't he, for weeks. So, and I think he probably was the one that helped, like that. I remember him saying, like what you saying, he'd like if she wanted to turn over in bed, he'd have to kind of hold her hips together so that she could turn or move or get up or go to the toilet. So he probably was the main person that did that. I would go around there each day or take Jed home. He'd stay with me for a few days just so that they could focus on that. Scott probably took you to the doctors the most of the time. I remember going to a few meetings where you were in a wheelchair. Do you remember that? And I'd look after Jed and Saskia. We could sort of at least, get to them. Well, maybe one or two Sunday meetings.
Yeah.
But that was hard.
What was it like seeing your daughter in pain?
Terrible. But at the same time, and this is what I wanted to say, Saskia was never negative or never complained. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So she made it very easy in that regard.
Where was God in here? You'd just come through this miracle.
Yeah.
And now you're faced with another
hurdle.
Huge hurdle.
God was there on a day-to-day basis. I remember there were other people that would pop meals around and things like that. I think Scott probably took more care of you physically in that way. I would probably be there more so to take care of little Jed and to keep you company. And,
Yes.
I think we still would have laughs and talk and, and that's what I mean. Saskia there was never negativity or complaining, which, I would be complaining, I would be complaining. But when you are in the Lord over many years, you realize that your walk is a day-to-day thing, and that is your strength. It's not always in anything else, but just the fact that the Lord is there every single day to pray to. And there were many times when I can remember just coming back home and just sitting and listening to choruses, because there were times, because I didn't get to many meetings at night, like it was sort of, and I just remember thinking, I just want to hear some choruses. I just want to sing, and I think leading up to Harry's birth, that was kind of the pointy end of everything. And I remember them saying they're going to have this specialist and that specialist and this specialist and that specialist in the room as they did the cesarean. And it's like, whoa. And I ended up ringing a brother in the Lord this one evening, and who's a doctor who I'd known for many, many years. And I just said, look, this is what's happening. I don't know what this means, don't know. And he just says, he said, it doesn't sound like they're expecting it to go well. Well, that night I just stayed up nearly all night and just sought the Lord. And that was the day before
Christmas.
Well, it was a day before our family Christmas. We had our family Christmas 2 weeks before Christmas, because obviously you weren't going to be around, and we thought, let's just have our family Christmas day.
And I remember being really happy. And I remember, I think it was Scott. I thought it was Scott and you that were talking about maybe you should just go into hospital now and have him early. And I was like, oh, I'm booked in, in a few days' time. It'll be fine. It's funny how you can be two things at once. And I was just existing, and I was in a lot of pain. But also, I had this perfectly beautiful 1-year-old and another baby and the love of my life looking after me, and my beautiful parents looking after me and encouraging me, my family and the family of God. And so you can be simultaneously in this really difficult position and also feel entirely restful and encompassed in the Lord's love.
Well, Paul talks about that, doesn't he? He mentions about being content in whatever state we're in, whether we're abased or whether we're bound. Therewith I learned to be content.
Yes.
So where did you learn that from, do you think? Is that your natural demeanour? Was it something that you sought the Lord for during that process, to never complain,
I think our whole life, every single step of our life growing up had been focused on the Lord being the King of our life and our Heavenly Father, and everything revolved around Him, whether it was school or work or where we lived or who we chose to fall in love with even. God was at the center of that, and so faithful in every aspect of life. I could talk for days about all of the ways that He's led me and guided me and answered my prayers. And so in those moments where everything, all of the symptoms, all of the tests are showing you that things aren't good, your entire life history, my entire life history was showing me that didn't matter, that the end of the matter was being taken care of by God. And in my head, that was, I was going to be delivered of a healthy baby and then I would walk again.
Yeah.
But
So more like Moses than the children of Israel. As you come out of Egypt, out of that Guillain-Barré syndrome, right? Coming out of Egypt, and now you're faced with the Red Sea, right? You're more Moses, let's stand and see what the Lord's going to do, rather than complain and moan about, what's come against you this time.
no, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel a cause for complaint. I felt pain, and I felt guilt and those other things, but none of that was the Lord's fault. None of it was that God wasn't hearing me or wasn't with me. I knew that He was the solution and that He would come through, and I fully expected that we would go in, we would have the cesarean, I'd have this beautiful baby, and I would walk and we would be a happy family.
So that was your expectation?
That was my expectation.
What happened?
So he still hadn't moved to the right position. We'd had the ultrasound right before the cesarean and he was still around the wrong way. I went in to have the spinal block put in. I remember hugging one of the anaesthetists while the other one did it and just telling him how much I loved him. He was just.
Do we need to edit this part out? Does your husband know about that, or should we?
He was there and he
Right,
understood.
Okay. Right.
I think he loved him too. But they put the spinal block in, and all of these people came into the room, and it happens very quickly. It's not like a natural birth where everybody's working really hard for hours. Within minutes, you're open and a baby comes out. It's just an incredible experience. And when Harry was lifted up, or when actually before that happened, when they made the cut, the surgeon said, I was told that he was around the wrong way. And the other surgeon said, yes, he was. This particular person did the ultrasound and she was the head of the the team that did that at that hospital, and she's really reliable. And this surgeon got really cranky and said, this baby is around the right way. And which was wonderful. So that was the first little miracle that had happened. And they lifted him out and gave him to the pediatrician. And the pediatrician took him and gave him the once over, and he was perfect.
So you're seeing this happen?
I'm watching this happen.
So you're not seeing the incision, but you're seeing...
I've got photos
Right.
of the incision.
So you're seeing
me
him lifted
bad
out and then...
but I can see him. Yeah, so they lift him out and they hold him up above a sheet so that you can see him. And I could see my baby. And he was perfect. And the pediatrician took him aside and confirmed what I already knew, that he was perfect. And he went to give him to me and the surgeon said no. So the pediatrician and the surgeon argued. And
Because the surgeon wanted more testing or more monitoring or whatever.
They were expecting that things were going to be really wrong, and I think they were being cautious of the fact that everything appeared okay. The pediatrician said, I've checked him, he's fine. He let me hold him, which was very special. But then he was taken away because they wanted to monitor him and check that everything was as good as it appeared to be.
So you go into NICU or something, did he?
He went into NICU, yep. But that was only for about, I think it was less than 24 hours because he was just so healthy. He ended up being 7 pound 10.5. He cried.
That's not a small baby.
No. And they'd expected him to be low birth weight. So on the ultrasound the day before the cesarean, they'd put low birth weight down. So all of the things that we had been told, like you were saying before, all of the information that we now have access to, it had been terrible news. And yet every single little aspect of that, the Lord just went, no, this perfect little baby is going to be fine. And I'm very thankful for that. So they left the epidural. So I had this healthy baby. They left the spinal block in, the epidural. They left it in for 48 hours for me. So normally they take that out within a few hours of recovery. Because of the mess my pelvis was in, they left it in for me, which was very nice of them.
Yes.
So for the first 2 days, I wasn't in terrible pain. And I was just getting to know this beautiful little baby who was just perfect, so chatty.
Are you mobile at this point?
No.
Yep, cool.
No, not at all. Just in bed, had the little epidural that I could click on whenever I needed a little bit more pain relief. And then they took that out. And I was given normal pain relief. But I tried to move and my pelvis was just a mess. And that was the first time that they said to me, it's going to be at least 3 months before you can start walking beyond your bed to the toilet. And I thought, I've got a 1-year-old and a brand new baby and a 2-story house in which we live upstairs. How am I going to do this? And I was still in so much pain. And I think that finishing line of birth had been keeping me going. And to have the finishing line pushed back, for it to not even start to be there for at least another 3 months, was really disheartening. And I got home and they sent the occupational therapist around and they said, look, you need to be able to put in a bathroom downstairs so that you don't have to go up and downstairs and modify your home and do all these things. It's going to be a long recovery. And I had done the mental gymnastics that you do when you're in difficulty. I'd sat in that time of waiting between asking the Lord for something and seeing the victory, and wrestled with how to get to the end point. And I had this moment of beautiful clarity where I had my baby, I had my other baby. I had my wonderful husband. I had my family. And I thought, God's given me all of this. And it actually doesn't matter whether I walk in 3 months, 3 days, or 3 years. When I walk, that will be because God gives me the gift to do it. And every good thing comes from Him. And the peace that comes with removing yourself from that gap between asking and receiving and just seeing it as God sees it, where He knows that the victory is there throughout all, is very peaceful. And the first miracle that came following that was that I slept. Even though I was feeding a little baby every few hours, the fact that I slept in between was an utter miracle.
Mm.
And the next morning, I woke up and I sat myself up in bed without any pain. And I swung my legs out of bed on my own and stood up on my own without any pain at all. I wasn't even lightheaded, and I hadn't been able to stand up on my own for so long, what felt like so long. And I just knew that God had performed an incredible miracle. And the first thing I wanted to do was shower myself. So I did. Sorry for listeners, but it does mean a lot. And I dressed myself. Getting dressed had been really difficult, and that's just really hard. And I got dressed, and I thought, all I want to do is ring my mum and tell her, but she's not going to believe me. So I said to Scott, darling, can you watch the babies? I'm just going to jump in the car and drive to mum and dad's and show mum, because I knew that you were still home, and show.
So hang on. So how long after you got out of hospital after the cesarean? It was 2 weeks.
This happened 2 weeks after.
Right.
2 weeks after the cesarean.
So hang on.
So
hang on.
weeks out of-
We're missing some steps here.
Okay.
So you sit up in bed.
Yeah.
You swing your legs around. Where's Scott?
It's so funny because he was next to me and he thought, wow, these new painkillers are really effective. Not realizing that I hadn't taken them.
Yeah.
And so he took a little bit of convincing as well. He was like, I said, no, I haven't taken any pain relief. And he was relieved, but I think
Skeptical.
yes, I think skeptical.
So when you said that I'm going to go and have a shower by myself, how did that go?
I mean, I was stoked. I'm sure he was really happy not to help as well, to be fair. But it was just, I was happily in the space of praising the Lord and knowing what He'd accomplished within my body. I think for Scott, it just took a little bit to see the reality without feeling like the other foot was going to drop, if that makes sense. But he did. He got there.
All right. So now we're back to jumping in the car, go around to see mum and dad.
So I jumped in the car and I knocked on the door and you didn't answer.
I'll tell my story in a minute.
Well, you tell it from now.
Okay, so just backtracking, after Saskia had the baby, after Harry was born, I mean, she was still in a tremendous amount of pain. Now, I remember talking to Dr. Kennedy and saying, look, what are our options here? She is in no state to be going home. Is there any sort of, place where she can have respite, where she can take the baby? And Dr. Kennedy tried to find a place where she could go and take Harry so that she could be cared for and the baby would be there. There was nowhere. There was nothing. And it was basically, look, she just has to go home and you've just got to all cope the best that you can. And I remember saying to the hospital, she needs to have some sort of assessment and really pushing for trying to get extra help and support medically. And remember the orthopod came in and that was at our...
What sort of What's an orthopod?
orthopedic surgeon.
Yep.
Yeah, he was, he knew about all of this stuff. And so we were sort of hoping to just get some guidance, some maybe solutions, something from him. And I was there that afternoon. He walked into the room, he stood at the end of the bed and he said, "I'm sorry, there is nothing I can do." And he literally backed out of the room while we were saying, "But there must be some help that we can receive. There must be something." And he just backed out of the room like this. And it was like there was nothing. So then it was a matter of, okay, we've just got to,
Yes.
and go on.
Because some of the solutions, like they can do surgery where they sort of wire the pelvis together, but it often doesn't help with the pain. It's often not very successful. So I think we were looking for whatever solutions, whatever way forward there was. And same with with the help. There's lots of places that will take you when you aren't walking and when you're incapacitated, but not with a brand new baby. So it was like every natural solution that we sort of sought, it just wasn't available. Even to the point where, being at home, all our bathrooms and everything were upstairs. And so I had to get up the stairs. I couldn't just live downstairs. So it was just hurdle after hurdle.
It just didn't, it was looking a bit bleak at this stage. And I remember feeling like, I'm not sure how I will manage this all. It seemed a little bit overwhelming. And I remember this was right before Christmas, and my Jed, grown-up Jed, had come down to camp, and I was at home on my own on Christmas Day. And I've never experienced anything like this, of having serious illness in the family. I'd never experienced it, let alone at a time like that. And so, I just said to my Jed, "Oh, look, I'm not going down to camp yet. I'm going to have a day at home." I think I took around a couple of meals to your place, and I said, "Just Scotty, I'm just going to go home and sleep for a couple of days," kind of thing. And anyway, the next day it was Christmas Day, and I was at home, and I was actually just having my normal time of prayer in the spirit, and there was a knock on the door, and I actually thought, who's coming around on Christmas Day trying to sell me something? I just come up, and I didn't answer it. So the door. And then the door, knock on the door again. I'm like, oh. So I stopped downstairs and opened the door, and there's Saskia standing in front of me. And I remember looking to see where Scott was. And Saskia just said to me, "Mum, just watch me walk. Just watch me walk." And she walked in, and she walked up and down the stairs, and we just stood there and wept and praised the Lord. And it was phenomenal. I could not give this testimony for probably 12 months after it happened, because I just couldn't do it. It was incredible.
Yeah.
It was an amazing moment.
We might just still pause while we wipe a tear.
I don't think any miracle in my life that I've experienced for my own healing or seen in my family affected me more than that moment, because it just was incredible.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And some nice theatre drama, there. Whereas, popping over and walking up the stairs. Well, nicely played.
Yeah. Got to make an entrance.
After so many months of not being able to walk,
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And we weren't expecting it. It was going to be literally months of recovery. I think Scott had the next 5 weeks off as well, didn't he? Which was amazing. He had paternity leave. So
Saskia, you said before about how, whether you were walking again in 3 months, 3 years, whatever, that it was when you walked again, it would be God's miracle. How far from that thought process to when you were healed?
That was my thought the night before. And the next morning I woke up and could sit up without pain. I was completely healed.
Yeah.
Overnight, the Lord gave me restful sleep and healed my body completely.
I've heard lots of testimonies like that, different circumstances, but the same thought process around just giving this whole thing over to the Lord and just stepping way back from it. Because as you mentioned, Briar, it just looks so hard in the natural, like all of these complicated factors and circumstances and situations, and there was no natural,
Nothing.
worldly way of making this go easy.
No, there wasn't. I think Dr. Kennedy said it's just up to the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all she said.
Yeah.
And she was really apologetic.
But it's that process around handing that over to the Lord and actually doing that, not just in a way, Lord, it's yours now, but the actual mental process of actually completely handing it over.
Absolutely. And I think in some ways I'd had a finishing line, a natural finishing line that had kept me going to a certain extent up until then. And that just kept getting moved and moved and moved. And it's when that happens sometimes that you go, actually, it's not about that natural solution, that natural finish line that I'm looking to. And it's not even about how it happens. It's just the fact that God is good and He blesses our lives and answers our prayers. And that's enough. I can rest in that. And He did. Even to the extent where it took several weeks for me to fully appreciate how much of a healing He'd given me. Because, of course, when I'd left hospital, they hadn't bothered with all of the post-cesarean conversation because I couldn't move.
So no point in saying you can't drive for 6 hours.
Drive.
Didn't we just drive to your mum's place?
That's how I was looking to see where Scott was. I'm like, this is not possible.
And you're not supposed to do it anyway. You're just
I was lifting my 15-month-old baby and my new baby and carrying things left, right, and centre and jumping in cars and driving. And it wasn't until I got to my 6-week post-birth appointment, and she looked at me and said, "How did you get here?" And I said, "Well, I because Scott wasn't with me." I said I drove, and she said, "I haven't cleared you to drive." Oh, sorry, I've been driving for a month. But I had no pain from the cesarean at all from that point. I had no pain from anything. So the Lord it wasn't a partial miracle. It was a complete answer to every single aspect of the issue. It was
so awesome. Praise the Lord. Wow, what a great story. Thank you.
Thanks.
So assuming Briar, that built some resilience for your next health chapter where Jed had a stroke.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, and you were talking about when you don't really know the seriousness of it, that it was exactly the same with that.
So I've got, Jed and I recorded his testimony, so I might put a link to that one in the show notes.
A good one.
Because that's a good one too. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing. That was wonderful.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. One of the themes I love in this story is how Saskia recounts being in 2 states at once, in such intense pain, but also completely restful in God's love. It was also interesting when she'd been told she wouldn't walk for a minimum of 3 months, and her prayer that night was, "Lord, if I walk in 3 days, 3 months or 3 years, that's fine, because I know that when I do walk, it will be because it's a miracle from you." And then she was healed the next day. How often do we hear of amazing miracles when people have the same restful state in the Lord and hand over their problem to Him? Hey, can I ask a favour? Can you share this testimony with somebody? Maybe it's someone inside of your church fellowship, or your neighbour, or someone who even doesn't know God yet. Let's preach the power that God has far and wide. Until next time, God bless.